on a calm Tennessee morning in 2025. A man formerly revered as a guitar god sits alone at the edge of a lake, clutching not a trophy or a microphone, but a custody schedule that states he is only permitted to be a father 59 days a year. The lake is quiet, a sheet of muted silver reaching towards the tree line, and a thin cloud of fog swirls like silent memories rising to the surface. Keith Urban first remains stationary. He only observes the ripples that appear whenever the wind blows across the lake, as if the silence might answer questions that fame never could. He doesn't resemble the bright icon who used to electrify entire stadiums with a single pluck. His hair is longer now, gentler around the face, and his eyes have a brilliance won only by walking through fire and choosing to remain compassionate. Behind him sits the universe he created. He spends most of his nights at the waterfront house. The studio has a glass wall that overlooks the water. The guitar is laying beside a half-finished tune that he attempted but failed to complete. The beauty of the setting appears deliberate, almost sacred. However, it is also a memorial to everything he has lost. The laughter that once filled these rooms is vanished, replaced by a silence that pounds on the walls like a memory too hard to bear. On September 30th, 2025, the story that millions believed in, the fairy tale marriage that appeared untouchable, came to an end. The documents were filed. The custody arrangement was signed. The house grew so quiet that no amount of applause could drown it out. 59 days. It's the kind of number that breaks a guy gradually, like a sliver buries itself deeper with each breath. But underneath the glitter and justifications, what processes are driving this crisis? We will examine every element from the initial errors to the lasting damage to understand how the entertainment industry operates and how an icon is reinvented. Before transforming into a story, the memory returns as a fragrance. Caboolture's crimson dust rises beneath the Queensland heat, accompanied by warm soil and dry winds. It was a small Australian town where ambition rarely rested, yet within a simple house on the outskirts of the dust, a youngster began to shape a destiny greater than anything around him could hold. Keith Lionel Urban was raised in a home that relied more on sacrifice than abundance. His father, Robert, worked long days at the shop and home exhausted, but still able to love. Marianne, his mother, sat in dim light, stitching rhinestones into homemade stage clothes, her fingers pinched but her voice strong. She repeated a remark that would come to be true in unexpected ways. A star should shine even if he is only playing for 10 people in a setting that smells like beer. At 6, Robert handed Keith a cheap, sun-faded guitar. It was purchased with money that the family did not have, but it was presented with reverence. Since then, the guitar has been the one object that has never gathered dust. Talent showcases followed, each lighted by buzzing fluorescent lights and adorned with paper ribbons. Other youngsters gazed at him with a mix of respect and distrust, thinking that the boy with the microphone was carrying something too dazzling for the town to handle. Life pressed him early. Power interruptions prompted him to practice by candlelight. Money was in short supply. Marianne repaired old garments rather than purchasing new ones, instead to invest in strings and lessons. Whispers circulated that the Urbans were stubborn or dumb. Dreams, he discovered, frequently resemble nonsense until they become irrefutable. By the age of 12, his playing had a sense of intensity that was unusual among children. At 14, he performed in dimly lit bars with men who worked too hard and felt too much. They taught him a fact that would haunt him throughout his adulthood. Music both saves and destroys you, often simultaneously. His parents realized the grandeur of his ambition and realized Caboolture could not sustain it. They got him on TV shows like New Faces and Have a Go. There, he met Mark Punch, the tutor who changed everything. Mark taught him that he was responsible for his talent, rather than that he was talented. Keith realized for the first time that gifts can only survive if they are disciplined. By his late teens, Caboolture felt too small. He packed his instrument and headed for Sydney. The city was faster, hungry, and indifferent. In a small flat above a busy street, he slept next to his guitar case, which was the only thing that felt familiar. He played smoky pubs where the audience was half intoxicated before the first chord, but even their expressions brightened as he performed. He rehearsed till dawn, penned songs on a kitchen table stained with cold coffee, and discovered that success was more about endurance than genius. However, endurance has limitations. Every instinct directed him to the location where country music legends had built out their lives. Nashville. He boarded an aircraft with little money, a bag, and a firm conviction that he belonged somewhere bigger. Nashville welcomed him with frigid air and warm indifference. The city didn't care about TV shows or pub gigs. It simply cared about what he could play on that particular day. He worked as a session musician, joined the ranch, and performed for anyone who would listen. Their album was not a commercial success, but rumors circulated about the blonde boy whose playing exuded fire and courage. He was unable to pay his rent on several evenings. Days when loneliness weighed more than his guitar. Moments when he wondered if the universe had tricked him. But he continued to turn up. He kept playing. He continued writing. He wasn't loud, entitled, or privileged. He was unrelenting. And perseverance eventually opened a door for him. His American debut came in 1999. With the steady rise of a single song, his life altered, drawing him from the periphery and into the tide of recognition he had sought since childhood. What are your thoughts about this? Comment Amen below so that we can continue with the unfinished stories. Keith Urban, for the first time since leaving Caboolture, was not merely surviving. He was rising. However, the very dream that was propelling him higher was about to hollow him out from the inside. Keith Urban's fame did not come quietly. It came in like a rising flood, slowly at first, then abruptly, then overwhelming. When his American debut began to climb the charts, Nashville no longer saw him as the driven outsider who haunted rehearsal rooms. Instead, the city started saying his name with a mix of respect and expectation. When somebody like you became viral across the country, it turned that momentum into a wave. It became more than just a song. It became the music for proposals, road trips, weddings, and vacations, which entire generations would remember thanks to his voice. Golden Road and Be Here followed, each album a step forward, each a cultural moment rather than a mere collection of songs. Critics appreciated his ability to infuse country music with rock elements and emotional clarity. Fans elevated him to the level of musicians who defined eras rather than just performing. Every achievement was exaggerated by the media. Magazine covers, award shows, late-night interviews, and sold-out arenas all blended into one blur of applause and flashing lights. However, the pleasure of fame turned into a never-ending cycle. Mornings vanished at airports, afternoons vanished in studios, and nights played out under stage lights that magnified every feeling. From the audience's perspective, he stood in transcendence, his guitar a conduit for energy that flowed through thousands of people at once. But transcendence did not follow him back to the motel. After each performance, he retreated to rooms smelling of linen and isolation. The stillness was harsh and almost accusatory. He would sit on the side of the bed and utter a secret he was reluctant to admit. He was grateful, but not satisfied. Everything except the vacant holes within him were lighted by fame. In that loneliness, a deadly comfort emerged. Some evenings, after victories that should have felt final, he reached for something more powerful than exhaustion. Addiction did not strike immediately. It settled softly, like dusk turning into darkness. It softened the edges of fear, muffled the sound of overexposure, and filled the void that applause could not fill. He didn't recognize the shadow until it was already familiar. Music protected him, but it also threatened to unravel him, as he had discovered during those early club nights as a teenager. Then, in the midst of that internal tempest, Nicole Kidman appeared. Their connection was immediate and consistent, a meeting of two artists who knew the violence and vulnerability of being in the spotlight. He felt a sense of serenity with her that he had never experienced before. Their love tale captivated people across the world. Red carpet appearances, passionate glances, collaborative endeavors, and the arrival of their daughters, Sunday and Faith, painted a picture of elegance and dedication. Many saw them as proof that fame and stability could coexist, that two stars could create a haven among the blaze of continual attention. But love cannot heal what a person refuses to face. As the years went, his internal fight persisted. A quiet, regular night turned into a watershed moment. He realized he was losing control, not only of himself, but also of the life he valued. The recognition was abrupt and sobering. He reached out for assistance. Rehabilitation was the most painful stage of his public life, but it also represented his most obvious gesture of responsibility. He emerged with steadier eyes, a calmer demeanor, and music infused with new tenderness and knowledge. Fans noticed the shift. Some admired his honesty. Others questioned the narrative, wondering if redemption had become a performance fashioned by industry expectations. Two currents emerged in public opinion. One group saw him as a guy who faced darkness with strength, choosing family and clarity above the allure of self-destruction. Another group questioned the reality of his transformation, claiming that the industry frequently reshapes personal struggles into palatable plotlines. The truth lay somewhere between these interpretations, suspended in the complexities that fame rarely exposes. For a time, his life appeared to be in balance. His career flourished. His family seemed stable. The music conveyed warmth rather than strife. But behind the surface, a little, fragile fissure was forming. It would spread into the crack that would reshape everything he thought he had achieved. Keith Urban appeared triumphant before the entire globe. For the man, the storm had only just begun. The question now isn't about celebrity, tours, or headlines. It is about identity. Who is Keith Urban when the world isn't looking? Who is he when the clamor dies down, the stage lights dim, and the work that once saved him is no longer sufficient to hold the parts together? In the quiet of this lakeside morning, he is forced to confront the version of himself that has dwelt in the limelight for decades. A version sculpted by remote choices, buried anxieties, inherited dreams, and the never-ending demands of a profession that celebrates genius but rarely protects the person that creates it. He shuts his eyes as the air shifts, bringing with it a subtle odor of damp dirt. It reminds him of something old and distant, something that existed before the accolades, headlines, stadiums, and adulation. The scent of red dust rising from the earth in a small Australian town taught a child that greatness is rarely born from ease. Before this ruined marriage, before addiction, before Nashville, before the world urged that he become special, that memory stirs again, softly but strong, drawing him back to the beginning. And thus the story progresses, from this calm Tennessee lake to a distant youth in which the first chords of his existence were played. The fracture was not accompanied by noise. It arose quietly, beneath routines that once seemed firm, beneath gestures that had long defined a marriage admired by millions. For over 2 decades, the world believed Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman shared a rare harmony. They walked red carpets holding hands, celebrated anniversaries with compassion, and nurtured their daughters with equal parts discipline and warmth. From the outside, their union appeared to be enhanced rather than weakened by storms. However, storms are not always loud. Some arrive from a distance. Not the sort measured in miles, but the invisible kind caused by crammed schedules, rushed discussions, and tiredness misread as dedication. Over time, the quiet tensions became a shadow that neither of them completely recognized. Insiders later described the event succinctly: irreconcilable divisions. However, silence is more likely to end a marriage than disagreements. Keith and Nicole were living apart by the summer of 2025. On September 30th, the paperwork was filed. The narrative concluded not with drama, but with autographs. In public, the tragedy was softened into a story of mutual respect and the need for closure. In private, Keith felt the weight of a custody verdict, which transformed his identity. Nicole would be the main residential parent. Every year, the girls would spend 306 days with her. Keith would have 59. He read the document slowly. Not because he disagreed with it. He had always known Nicole to be a devoted and steady mother. The pain sprang from something deeper. The number cut itself into him, clear and unmistakable. 59 days. 59 mornings, evenings, and good nights. An amount that revealed a truth he had evaded for years. Success had taken him further away from home than he had ever wanted to go. The media created their own narrative. It implied that he prioritized music over family, and that constant touring demonstrated a preference for the spotlight over presence. In reality, fame is rarely an easy choice. It behaves more like a current, luring artists into rhythms they struggle to resist. Still, criticism spreads quickly. Headlines distilled a complex marriage into a single sentence. Rumors grew when whispers connected him to Kelsey Ballerini. Stories circulated of studio sessions, intimate dinners, shared laughs. Neither of them addressed the speculation, and silence, once again, fueled a flame. But beyond the noise, something more human was occurring. Keith was dissolving, not into anarchy, but into a gentler, quieter version of himself. The real tragedy was not the divorce, not the rumors, nor the scrutiny. It was the grief of a father missing his daughters. The ache of losing a home he tried to protect. The fear of starting over at an age when the world assumes a person has everything figured out. Then came the moment that shifted everything. One night, in the stillness of his Nashville home, he walked into the living room and saw the remnants of a life that felt painfully close yet impossibly distant. His daughter's drawings remained pinned to the wall. A small pink hair tie lay forgotten beside the couch. A half-finished school project sat on the table, frozen in time. He picked it up gently, then placed it back, afraid that moving it would erase something sacred. In that quiet, he finally understood the truth he had outrun for decades. He had spent his life learning how to be heard. He had never learned how to let himself feel. Music had been his shield, his language, his confession. It helped him escape, express, and survive. But the people closest to him needed more than a melody. They needed the man behind it, present and vulnerable in ways he had always avoided. That night, clarity arrived not as relief, but as a humbling acceptance. A person can be good and still fail the people he loves. The realization did not break him. It revealed him. In the weeks that followed, he stopped running. He called his daughters every night, not because a court required it, but because he finally understood that these small conversations were the real music of his life. He stepped back from noise, from speculation, from the pressure to define a next chapter. He wrote songs not for charts, but to stitch himself back together. He let silence teach him what sound never had. People wondered whether he had found new love, whether he was rebuilding, whether his heart had opened again. But Keith knew the truth. Before he could love anyone else, he had to learn to love the man he had become. Scarred but sober. Broken but healing. Alone but not lost. For the first time in his life, Keith Urban faced a task greater than fame, addiction, or heartache. He was learning to stay motionless long enough to experience everything he had spent years outrunning. The lake is calm again. The same Tennessee light that previously revealed a man standing at the verge of tragedy now falls more gently across the river, softening the edges of everything it touches. Keith Urban sits on the aged wooden steps outside his studio, the morning air cool on his skin, his guitar resting next to him like an old buddy that has waited with patience rather than expectation. There is no audience, no stage, No headlines. Only the shaky beat of a man learning to breathe without running for the next demand, the next escape, the next diversion. The aftermath of his storm has not been marked by stunning reinvention or quick victory. Instead, it has unfolded quietly, in modest decisions that rarely make headlines. He gets up earlier than he used to. He writes in stillness rather than chasing melodies to fatigue. He speaks to his daughters with a presence he has never given himself before, not as a rock star juggling schedules, but as a parent who has realized that time, even if measured in only 59 days per year, can feel bountiful when utilized with purpose. These moments do not erase the past, but rather shed a kinder light on the journey ahead. Success is a part of his life, but it is no longer the compass. He performs deliberately and records with firmer boundaries, selecting projects that reflect the stability he has battled to restore. The industry continues to watch him, speculate, and murmur about his next move, but he has realized that public curiosity does not equate to personal direction. Fame once submerged him in its currents. Now he approaches it with great caution, realizing that significance cannot be sought in applause that fades as the stage lights dim. The lesson embedded in his path is greater than the specifics of his divorce, addiction, or the rumors that circulated about him. It emphasizes the delicate balance between the image that the world expects and the person that a guy becomes when he is no longer performing. It illustrates the cost of living a life shaped by public expectations, as well as the quiet fortitude required to unravel that weight piece by piece. It serves as a reminder that loving deeply does not imply loving well, that providing does not imply being present, and that even amazing lives can falter in the most basic human ways. Keith Urban's future remains unwritten. Love may find him again, or it may wait quietly at the threshold of a fresh beginning. The rumors that once surrounded him may vanish, reemerge, or evolve into stories that no one can predict. His music can change into something gentler, stronger, or completely unexpected. But tonight, none of these options define him. What distinguishes him is the clarity cut from loss, the tenderness sculpted by grief, and the quiet strength of a man who has learned to trust in the gradual reconstruction of his own life. Keith Urban once fled the world to become someone remarkable. Now he moves slowly enough to be himself. And amid the controlled serenity of this new chapter, that basic fact may be the most significant comeback of all.